An invitation from one of the 5 major military regions in the country made contact with Zhang Yi and the other 4 major bases in Tianhai City, demanding a meeting with their leaders and Zhang Yi with utmost urgency. At this moment, Zhang Yi, upon seeing the content of the email on the computer, his entire demeanor immediately shifted as his eyes widened with an evident shock etched on his face. The content of the email was about the arrival of a special dispatch personnel from Jiangnan District to Tianhai City, and the following invited guests should please be sure to arrive at the Tianhai City Central Building on time at 2:30 that very afternoon. The list of the invited guests were Xing Weinan from Emerald Waterside Base, Xiao Honglian from Radiant Prosperity Base, Wei Dinghai from Morning Dew Base, Yuan Kongye, the leader of Snow Worship Sect, and Zhang Yi, who had no title. The email had a signature below which belonged to Jiangnan Military Region. A visible sweat dripped down Zhang Yi's face when he finished reading the email. Jiangnan Military Region. Isn't it one of the 5 major military regions in the country with its headquarters in Jinling? Zhang Yi questioned. For all citizens, this was basic common sense. The 5 major military regions in the country represented the top military forces in China. Before the apocalypse, they were the foundations of the country. And after the end of the world, they had become the cornerstones of the stability of the country. As for how strong the Jiangnan region was, there is no need to question it. The reason why Zhang Yi was able to defeat West Mountain Base, who were arguably the strongest force in Tianhai City, was largely due to Jiangnan region launching a missile, which Zhang Yi took advantage of. Basically, if the Jiangnan region wanted to, they could make the entire Tianhai City disappear from the map in a blink of an eye. At this time, Yang Xinxin suddenly drove her wheelchair forward with a nod. Yes, big brother. I think it must be them. Hearing this, Zhang Yi frowned slightly. How can we be sure that this email is real, and not a conspiracy or a prank by someone? Yang Xinxin shook her head when she heard the question. Brother Zhang Yi, I can tell you for sure that this must be a message from someone in Jiangnan District, because our network system is equipped with a very strong firewall. If I don't allow it, the message can't be delivered. But this email went straight over my superficial firewall and was sent directly to our mailbox. And there are only 2 types of people who could do this. The first was a hacker who was above me, and the second was an official agency with higher authority at the internet level. Of course, it's impossible for anyone in the country to break into our network in such a short time without me noticing. So I can conclude that the other party must be from Jiangnan District. What I failed to find out was their purpose for coming to Tianhai City suddenly this time. However, I believe it could be related to the problem of zombies. Yang Xinxin said with a guess. Hearing this, Zhang Yi asked her after a brief moment. They could actually do this? Doesn't that mean our network is no longer safe? Yang Xinxin smiled disapprovingly. The real core of the shelter is the internal network, which uses an independent server and has no connection with the outside world. They're welcome to give it a try, but I can guarantee that they can't break it no matter how many times they're given. Hearing this, Zhang Yi breathed a sigh of relief. However, he still felt that this problem had become a little tricky now. With the addition of external forces, and the behemoth whose strength is completely overwhelming than that of the 5 major forces in Tianhai City, the situation was heading to an uncharted territory. Out of control. But I do agree with your reasoning earlier. I also think their visit here is likely related to the current zombie tide. After all, the scale of the zombie tide is too large, and its origin is too mysterious. If it is left unchecked, perhaps all corpses in the entire Tianhai City will become a huge zombie tide. Not to mention that there are also terrifying giant rats mixed in. Once the zombie tide and the mutated rat swarms spread to other cities, it will turn into an uncontrollable disaster. Yang Xinxin nodded in agreement. From this email, it's evident that they are fully aware of all the conditions in the entire Tianhai City. And their accurate singling out the leaders of the various forces was an undeniable proof of their reach. I think I should go there. There is no need to offend a higher-level district at this time. Zhang Yi leaned back on the sofa with his head in his hands and thought for a while. He then continued. Judging from the computer capabilities of several other companies in Tianhai City, it is unlikely that this is a trap set by them. However, for safety reasons, I'd better go with our strong armed forces we possibly have with me. This is the safest way. With the power of other forces in the entire Tianhai City greatly weakened, Zhang Yi wasn't particularly worried when it came to safety. Also, as long as he goes with his elite team, even if they encounter any force, there wouldn't be too much danger. And even if they couldn't beat an opponent that was too strong, they could still escape easily. So, Zhang Yi called everyone to the lounging hall and told them about the situation at hand. After hearing that people from Jiangnan District were coming to Tianhai City, everyone had different expressions on their faces. A worried Chunlei said with a bitter face, "Our current life is relatively stable. If other forces enter Tianhai City, I'm afraid it will change everyone's current living environment. Zhang Yi shook his head disapprovingly when he heard what Chunlei said. Although Tianhai City is a port city with relatively abundant supplies, but compared to the Jiangnan district, it's simply not worth mentioning, including the things Zhang Yi had in his hands. After all, Jiangnan has been the most prosperous commercial region since ancient times. After Zhang Yi's explanation, Chunlei was a bit relieved. That would naturally be the best. I just think everyone is living a pretty good life now, and I am afraid of changes. Hearing this, his reaction was understandable. You see, people who live a comfortable life always don't want anything to change the status quo. Considering the problem from an optimistic perspective, Zhang Yi had a good feeling about the arrival of the people from the district. And except for Chunlei, a pessimist, the others seemed to think the same. Uncle Yu, who was born in the military, had his arms crossed when he added in a confident manner, "I think we should trust them." As the leader of the region, Jiangnan region must not want to see a large-scale zombie riot in a city with a large population like Tianhai City. Liang Yu nodded in agreement. "I think so too." Hearing this, Zhang Yi also nodded and said after a considerable thought, "Well, since the news has been sent to us, we have to go and take a look anyway." He then looked at Yang Xinxin. "Yang Xinxin, you are responsible for monitoring the network." Hearing the task assigned to her, Yang Xinxin replied with a slight nod. So, with a fierce determination, Zhang Yi cautioned everyone. Although we can basically determine the identity of the other party, we still have to be on the safe side to avoid traps set by other people using some unknown means. The scene shifts to Tianfeng district in Tianhai City, where several buildings were now completely covered by the snowstorm, leaving only a few floors of a couple buildings which once used to be considered giants. Amidst these frozen buildings was the vehicle of the Jiangnan District Investigation Team. Their vehicle, which was specially made for their mission, sped at top speed on the snowy field with ease. They soon reached their destination several seconds later. Parking near a building which was now mostly buried by ice and snow was once the magnificent central building. The exposed half was also piled with thick snow. If the positioning was not accurate enough, it would be difficult to find this location. Seeing the current state of the central building, the deputy captain, Bailey Chongqing, commented, "Oops, I didn't expect this place to be like this." Folding his arms, he approached the building and continued, "This place is terrible. There should be many people coming by. So this mess was not good." At this time, the only blonde in the team, Wu Di, was next to him. And with a relaxed smile on his face, he declared, "It doesn't matter. I'll clean it up." Then, he opened his right hand and pointed at the central building in the distance. Soon after, accompanied with a loud boom, a massive ray of golden light quickly shot from his palm, and the thick ice and snow piled in front of the building shook violently. A moment after, a giant hole was created in a large pile of the ice and snow, creating a passageway into the building. After doing all this, Wu Di stepped aside with a smile on his face, then made a please gesture. "Captain, please do us the honor." The team captain, Bian Junwu, said nothing with an expressionless face as he walked past Wu Di. The team captain was wearing a pair of black winter gloves and had a dark glasses on with a gray trench coat. Bailey Chongqing followed closely behind, and the others did the same in turn. From the order of their footsteps, their status in the team can be seen. The first and obvious was the team captain, Bian Junwu, followed by the deputy captain, Bailey Chongqing. The third was Wu Di, and then their virus experts Meng Xiu and Qi Guangming, who were parallel and had the same status. In the investigation team, each member's combat power level was higher than an elite soldier of the major forces. Especially the two captains and Wu Di, their abilities are at least at the level of a base leader or even higher. A while later, Radiant Prosperity Base, with their usual red heavy armor truck, was the first to arrive at the scene. Xiao Honglian came with 4 mutant captains and 10 elite warriors, while Zhuge Qingting and the rest stayed behind to protect the base. Upon arrival, Xiao Honglian saw the uniquely modified vehicle and commented, Only one car? It seems that there are not many people sent by the district." Xiao Honglian felt a little heavy. She knew very well how serious the threat of the zombie tide was. If a large army was not sent over, then it would be difficult to deal with the army of undead completely. Xiao Honglian led her soldiers to the central building. But when they got closer to the building, she clearly saw the ice and snow passageway that was possibly more than 10 meters deep. "Well, this is it." Xiao Honglian stretched out her hand to feel the shape of the ice and snow passageway. The regular curved surface showed that it was not made by a machine, but it looked like a passage that was punched out by a person, and it was very smooth and flat. "This is the method of a mutant. There are masters among those who came," she whispered. Then she led her soldiers through the giant hole. And just as they were approaching the end, a blonde-haired man in a uniform suddenly came out, looking at them with a smile. "Which base are you from?" Hearing this, Xiao Honglian frowned but answered anyway. "We are from Radiant Prosperity Base, and I am the leader, Xiao Honglian." Wu Di's feminine face had a condescending look. "Xiao Honglian, the former captain of the Tianhai City Criminal Police Brigade. Welcome." Wu Di said this to show that the investigation team knew all there is to know about her. Wu Di continued that Xiao Honglian can proceed to enter the building, but only she could enter. Her men, on the other hand, must stay outside for the time being. Hearing this, Xiao Honglian did not refuse. She turned her head towards her men and told them to wait for her outside. But a captain-level mutant whispered to her with evident worry. "Leader, what if it is a trick?" Xiao Honglian raised a sneer at the corner of her mouth. "Even if it's a scam, if I want to leave, no one can stop me." Hearing this, her soldiers watched silently as she made her way into the central building step by step. Not long after, the second base to arrive was Morning Dew Base. Wei Dinghai was more cautious and even brought his strongest deputy Chun Jingguan with him. After all, during this period, Wei Dinghai was a little nervous because of the successive defeats and corpse-tide attacks. So as they entered the giant passageway in the heavy pile of ice and snow, Wu Di blocked their path and was only allowing Wei Dinghai to proceed. Chun Jingguan was not happy hearing this. "What are you guys afraid of? Are you afraid that we will eat you up if we have more people?" Seeing Wu Di's condescending smile made Chun Jingguan furious. At this point, he cared even less about losing face. And although the other party was in the name of Jiangnan District, this was Tianhai City and not their territory. After hearing Chun Jingguan's words, Wu Di's mockery became even stronger. "We only talk to the leaders of each major force. Or could it be that you are the boss of Morning Dew Base?" Chun Jingguan was boiling with rage upon hearing this. However, his boss, Wei Dinghai, who was right in front of him, signaled him to stop and said, "We came here with sincerity. Since you guys just want to talk to me, it's understandable to let me go alone." Wei Dinghai then turned to face Chun Jingguan and patted him on the shoulder. "Just wait for me outside." He then gave Chun Jingguan a warning look, conveying that the guy in front of them was a mutant and a master at that, so he shouldn't conflict with him over such a trivial matter. Chun Jingguan's body stiffened almost immediately, so with a simple nod, he replied that he understands. Hearing this, Wei Dinghai walked into the central building with a calm expression. Chun Jingguan's face, however, looked a little ugly, but thinking of Wei Dinghai's instructions, he didn't dare to make a move, so he could only pretend not to hear and stand aside. This action attracted a burst of laughter from the soldiers of Radiant Prosperity Base who were nearby. Not long after the people from the two forces arrived, Zhang Yi and his team arrived next. Looking at the vehicles and soldiers from a distance, Zhang Yi knew that the people from Radiant Prosperity Base and Morning Dew Base had arrived first, and their leaders were probably inside already. Zhang Yi took out his handgun and said, "It's not like enemies can't get together, but I hope these guys can be more peaceful and not cause trouble." Zhang Yi didn't want to be entangled in any needless fights, but was prepared to fight if it came down to it. Sure enough, when Zhang Yi and his team got off his car, the atmosphere on the scene suddenly became tense. The soldiers from Radiant Prosperity Base looked at them with disdain and anger, their eyes almost blazing with fire, but at the same time they were also deeply afraid. Because after the battle of the 5 major forces, everyone reached a consensus that the combat effectiveness of Zhang Yi's team was very strong, and they should not be provoked easily. Zhang Yi, remaining vigilant at all times, walked past them without uttering a word. Zhang Yi and his companions reached the front of the central building, and also saw the passageway cleared by Wu Di. He immediately realized that this method was just an indirect warning to let everyone who came there understand how powerful the special envoys of the Jiangnan region were. At that moment, Wu Di's voice sounded from the giant hole. "You are Zhang Yi, right? Come in by yourself and the others must stay outside." When Zhang Yi heard Wu Di's voice, he showed a harmless smile on his face, spread his hands and said humorously, "Okay, as you wish." He then asked Uncle Yu and the others to stay outside for a while or go back in the car if they chooses. Zhang Yi walked into the central building slowly as Wu Di's eyes were on him, almost never leaving. Approaching Wu Di, Zhang Yi asked with a smile, "By the way, which room is it in?" Hearing the question, Wu Di looked at Zhang Yi with his arms crossed. A smile involuntarily crept on his lips. Based on their intel, Wu Di heard that Zhang Yi was a strong mutant. So, upon seeing him, his little fiery eyes showed an undeniable sense of competitiveness. Wu Di wanted to have a little spar with Zhang Yi if possible. On the left-hand side of the 5th floor, there is the 3rd conference room. "Oh, thank you." Zhang Yi just smiled and left. His demeanor didn't look imposing at all, like a harmless young man next door. Zhang Yi walked according to the path Wu Di pointed out, and on the way, he met several other people in the investigation team. Soon, he reached the meeting room that Wu Di had directed. The door was slightly opened, and he walked in with a slight push. The meeting room was spacious, with a huge red table in the middle. When Zhang Yi walked in, no one bothered to look over. Two old acquaintances, Xiao Honglian and Wei Dinghai, were also there. However, what Zhang Yi cared about most was the middle-aged man sitting in the first seat, wrapped in a gray coat and wearing large sunglasses indoors. Could it be that he is blind? Zhang Yi thought with a smile and introduced himself as he took a seat. I am Zhang Yi. May I ask who you are? Hearing the question, Bian Junwu put down his arms and said in a cold tone, My name is Bian Junwu, and I am the person in charge of the investigation of the zombie situation sent by the Jiangnan district this time. Zhang Yi gave a delightful smile and replied, Oh, it turns out to be Mr. Bian, whom I have admired for a long time. After an undisclosed time, Xing Tian from the Emerald Waterside Base also arrived at the conference room. It took me a while to travel. Please forgive me. Bian Junwu replied that it was fine, and then gestured with his hand for Xing Tian to take a seat. Xing Tian smiled and greeted Bian Junwu first, then sat down next to Zhang Yi. Xiao Honglian and Wei Dinghai hated Xing Tian for his betrayal and robbery. However, Xing Tian didn't care about their looks at all, and chatted with Zhang Yi right away. Old classmate, it seems you've managed to stay safe. Zhang Yi frowned and his voice became low. Don't mention it. I have to clean up those things every day, and they now seems to be annoying me to death. If this continues, I'm afraid my shelter won't last long. Zhang Yi said this with a heavy sigh as he slumps in his chair.